Jack the Ripper Unsolved Mystery. Code word Beanstalk.
I'm Rob.
And I'm Carson. Jack the Ripper was a very famous serial killer in the late 1800s and was never caught. First, we will talk about the victims. But who were they? The first victim was named Mary Ann Nichols. She lived a fairly normal life in London. She married William Nichols and had 5 children with him.
After the third child, she started to drink very heavily. She left the house secretly many times while drunk. One year, after William and Mary Ann had their 5th child, they separated and the kids stayed with William.
William was forced to pay her a maintenance allowance weekly, but stopped once learning she was a prostitute. She lived at Lambeth Workhouse for 2 years, but then moved in with her father for 2 months. She moved out after they had an argument about her drinking problem.
She lived with Thomas Stewart for 4 years, but they broke up. She went about with her life about a year more. On August 30th, Mary Ann was seen walking all alone on Whitechapel Road at 11:30 p.m. At 12:30, she left a pub and went out onto the streets. At 1:20, she went to a lodging house, but was turned away because she did not have enough money. Emily Hollins saw her at 2:30 and offered to pay for Mary Ann's bed, but Manny declined, and they parted. At 3:40 a.m., Charles Cross was on his way to work when he found Mary Ann's dead body in the gateway, heavily mutilated, 5 teeth missing.
The next victim was named Annie Chapman. When she was 29 years old, she married John Crossan. Over the next 11 years, they had 3 kids. After one of the kids had a disability and was put into a nursing home, the eldest daughter died of meningitis. After that, both parents started drinking heavily. The couple parted in 1884, and John continued to pay an allowance of 10 shillings a week until his death, 1886. Annie became a prostitute.
2 years later, in 1888, Annie started to live on the streets and spent nights in a hotel if she could afford it. On September 7th at 5 p.m., she was heavily sick and sitting on the streets. At 11:30 that night, she walked to a lodging house and was let into the kitchen to sleep. At 1:35 a.m., on the morning of September, she was kicked out by the deputy of the lodging house. At 5:30 a.m., a woman walked past Annie, talking to a man. She heard the man ask, "Will you?" Annie replied yes. At 6 a.m., John Davis saw Annie Chapman's body in the backyard, and the police could see that Jack the Ripper had taken her room.
Elizabeth Stride, known as Long Liz, was a prostitute. At 6:30 p.m., she was seen at Queen's Head pub quenching her thirst. By 7 p.m., she was seen by Charles Preston, dressed and ready to go out. Bess and John Gardner were positive they saw her at the doorway at Bricklayer's Arms. She was accompanied by a 5'5" man. It almost seemed like she didn't want to go out with him. Though she was uncomfortable, he continued to kiss and hug her. Bess and John went up to them and said, lightheartedly, "Watch out! That's Level Apron around you." Level Apron was one of the suspects. Then the couple ran off into the lane and embarrassed. A little after 12:30, her body was found in Berner Street, Whitechapel.
Catherine Eddowes is the 4th victim, and is not much known about her life. As the body of Elizabeth Stride was being found, Catherine was being released from jail. Eddowes was a prostitute who had spent the night in jail for sleeping on the streets and refusing to leave since she was drunk. She was let out, and later Joseph Londe saw Catherine with a man who was most likely Jack the Ripper. 15 minutes later, the body was found.
The final victim was also a prostitute and is named Mary Kelly. She is much younger than the other victims. Walter Dew claimed to have known her years later and said she used to parade down the streets by Whitechapel Road. She was usually dressed neatly and had a good reputation. 2 weeks before her death, she lived with an unemployed fish porter named Joseph Barnett. Him not working meant not being able to pay rent, which caused a fight between them. Later, she invited a homeless prostitute named Julia. The last time Joseph saw her was the Thursday before her body was found. On September 9th, she was found dead in bed at 10:45 a.m.
Time for the theories! The first theory is that Jack the Ripper had medical knowledge. Jack the Ripper had very precise cuts and made sure they were dead. He would need to know information about the human body as a doctor would. Michael Ostrog was a Russian doctor who had detained in an insane asylum as a homicidal lunatic. However, he was not considered violent, and was not marked as in England during the time of the murders.
Another theory is that the murderer is a butcher. Butchers have a lot of strength and skill with a knife to be precise with the cutting. Butcher could have made sure the victim was dead with the strength and skill of a knife.
A last theory is that he could have been a foreigner, since the letters we will talk about in a second has less than perfect grammar. However, this could have been easily faked to throw the police off.
We are now going to talk about the letters that we found. First one I'm going to talk about is known as Dear Boss. The letter was found by a news booth. It started with, Dear Boss. In it, the letter talked about how the person writing loved murder. He said it has gone pleasantly, and the next victim he will cut their ears off and mail them to the police just for the fun of it. Finally, it was stated, I can't wait to get started. It was signed, Jack the Ripper.
This letter could have easily been faked and planted there to try to be funny. However, this letter was found the day before both Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes were murdered. Since the letter stated that Jack the Ripper couldn't wait to get started, it would make sense if he killed the people the day after. Elizabeth Stride's ears were also heavily mutilated but not removed. This could have been because he tried to cut them off and mail them to the police but did not have enough time.
Next is the From Hell letter. Mr. Lusk was the leader of a civilian group who helped the police out. He got a letter labeled From Hell, and the letter was half of Catherine Eddowes' kidney. The other half, Jack the Ripper claims he fried it up and ate it. This letter has horrible grammar suggesting that Jack the Ripper is a foreigner.
The most likely suspect is Aaron Kosminski. He's Polish, which would make sense for a bad grammar. In the letters and conclude the foreigner's theory. He hated women, especially prostitutes. This would make sense because those were the people he killed. He went to an insane asylum. This shows he was crazy, which is one of the reasons people kill. However, he's just a suspect and nothing is proven against him.
Thanks for watching Beanstalk Unsolved. Overall, this was a massive episode. If you want to be that Sigma boy, hit that subscribe button.